In 2025, a young woman in Southern California figured out how to live on $260 a month in a city where apartments run fit $900. No van, no couch, a storage unit. The full story's below. Subscribe so you never miss one. Nobody tells you what it feels like when the floor drops out from under a life you spent years carefully building on almost nothing. Maya Callahan was 24, and she had been proud of that apartment on Claremont Street, in the Wood Streets neighborhood of Riverside, California. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a kitchen window that faced a parking structure instead of sky. But it was hers, split down the middle with her roommate Danny Torres. And at $400 a month between 2 people it was, by Riverside math, a miracle. She had worked the morning shift at Groundwork Coffee on Main Street for 3 years to keep her half of that miracle alive. She knew the names of the regulars. She knew how the espresso machine sounded different on cold mornings. She had a routine, and a routine felt like safety, and safety was not something she had ever taken for granted. The letter from the new property management company arrived on a Tuesday in early March of 2025. The building had been sold. A company called Vantage Residential Holdings had purchased it as part of a 7-property acquisition across the Inland Empire. Effective the 1st of May, the monthly rent would increase to $900. Maya read the letter twice at the kitchen table, then set it face down on the laminate surface, as if not looking at it could change the number. It couldn't. That same evening, Danny sat across from her with a look Maya would later recognize as guilt, wearing the costume of good news. Danny was engaged. She had been engaged for 6 weeks. She was moving into her fiancé's house in Temecula at the end of the month. She was sorry she hadn't said anything sooner. Maya said congratulations, and meant it. Mostly. She cried in the shower afterward, where the sound of the water made it easier to be honest. She had 3 weeks, $900 in her checking account, and a life she needed to rebuild from whatever she could carry. The Monday morning after Danny's announcement, Maya sat in the back corner of the library on 9th Street with a legal pad and wrote down every number she could think of. It was the kind of math that felt like counting exits in a burning building, necessary, clinical, and quietly terrifying. The cheapest motel she could find within walking distance of Groundwork was the Riverside Inn on University Avenue, running $52 a night, which worked out to $560 a month before tax. The 2-bedroom she shared with Danny had already been listed online by Vantage at $1,950 for a single occupant. The waiting list for the county emergency shelter on Mulberry Street was 6 weeks minimum, and 6 weeks was longer than she had. She called 211 from the library bathroom. The woman on the line was kind, unhurried, and honest. There were options. Most of them had waiting periods. None of them solved the problem of May 1st. Maya thanked her, hung up, and stood for a moment, looking at her own reflection in the scratched metal of the paper towel dispenser. She looked like someone who was about to do something she couldn't tell anyone about. The idea of the storage unit didn't come from a Reddit thread or a YouTube video. It came from a folded piece of paper she found tucked into the back of a small drawer at the service counter at Groundwork, the kind of drawer where things collected without anyone deciding to keep them. The note was written in blue ballpoint in a careful, older-style cursive. It listed a general idea, a storage unit, a rough monthly cost, a few practical notes about what to bring and what to leave, and at the bottom, one unsigned line. If you're reading this, you might need it someday. Maya had found it 8 months earlier and left it where it was. That afternoon, she went back to the drawer and put it in her jacket pocket. She gave herself 5 days to look before she committed to anything. That was the rule she set for herself, because she had learned early that the difference between a bad decision and a worse one was usually the 5 minutes you didn't spend thinking before you acted. Every morning after her shift ended at 1 o'clock, Maya walked a different route home, extending the loop by a mile or two in whatever direction held the next address from the list she had compiled at the library. She visited 8 storage facilities over 5 days, carrying a tote bag so she looked like someone running errands rather than someone auditing infrastructure. She noted cameras. She noted staffing. She noted how long it took for an employee to appear after she walked through a gate. At the 3rd facility, a national chain on Van Buren Boulevard, a man in a branded polo shirt materialized within 90 seconds and walked her through every aisle. She crossed it off the list. On the 4th day, she found Hillside Storage on Magnolia Avenue, 10 minutes from Groundwork on foot. It was a single-story outdoor facility, older, with a chain-link perimeter fence painted green, and a small office near the entrance that looked like it had last been renovated sometime before Maya was born. There was one camera mounted above the gate. The signage was hand-lettered. When she walked in and asked about availability, the man behind the desk was Carl Benson, 71 years old, wearing reading glasses on a cord around his neck and moving with the careful deliberateness of someone whose knees had a great deal to say about stairs. He showed her unit B17 himself, walking slowly, not rushing her. The unit was 10 by 10, climate-controlled, with an interior roll-up door, older hardware, the kind that had enough give in the latch mechanism that it could be eased down from inside without clicking fully locked. Carl told her first month was $93 with a valid ID and a debit card. Maya paid on the spot. On the walk back, she stopped at the post office on University Avenue and rented a P.O. box for $8 a month, updating her address with her bank and her employer the same afternoon. On the walk home, she noticed she was breathing differently, not easier, exactly, but more deliberately, the way you breathe when you've made a decision. And the weight of the unknown has been replaced by the weight of a plan. She moved what mattered into Unit B17 on a Saturday morning, making 3 trips on foot with a rolling cart borrowed from the storage facility's lobby. What mattered turned out to be less than she expected. A duffel bag of clothes, her laptop, a backpack with her documents, and the external hard drive where she kept 3 years of photographs. A box of books she couldn't let go of even knowing they were impractical weight. Everything else, the furniture, the kitchen things, the decorative objects that had made Claremont Street feel like a home, she left for Danny to deal with or donate. The day before move-in, she had gone to Fletcher's Furniture on Magnolia and asked if they had boxes. The stockroom manager, a tired man named Pete, who clearly got this question more than he wanted to, pointed her to a loading bay where flat-broke cardboard was stacked chest-high. She made 2 trips with the rolling cart and filled the front 3 feet of B17 floor to ceiling. 23 boxes, most of them empty, stacked with the sealed ends facing outward so they looked loaded. The wall took her 40 minutes and looked, when she stepped into the hallway and turned around to assess it, exactly like a storage unit that had been packed by someone who ran out of space before they ran out of stuff. Behind it, she set up the sleeping mat, the air mattress she'd bought at Target for $38, the sleeping bag, rated to 20 degrees that she found on Facebook Marketplace for $30 from a man in Moreno Valley who was moving to Arizona. The propane heater went in the back left corner, the marine battery and LED strip on the right. She hung the camping toilet behind a moving blanket rigged to a bungee cord. When she turned on the LED strip and sat on the air mattress and looked at what she'd built, what she felt was not shame, though she had expected it. What she felt was something closer to the particular unwelcome pride of having solved a problem that shouldn't have existed. Then Carl appeared in the hallway. By the end of the second week, Maya had a life again, even if it was one she couldn't describe out loud to anyone. She arrived at B17 each night between 9:30 and 10, coming in through the gate with her access code and walking the B-row hallway quickly and quietly, sneakers soft on the concrete. She left each morning between 5:40 and 5:50. Before Carl arrived at 8 and before the world outside needed her to be anyone in particular. The in-between hours were her own. She ate food she had prepped once a week, rice, canned beans, pasta, peanut butter on bread, and heated things on a small butane camping stove she set near the base of the box wall where the ventilation gap under the door was widest. She kept every cooking session under 4 minutes and never ran the stove with the door fully down. She left a 2-inch gap at the bottom during use and waited until the smell of gas had cleared before closing it again. She filled her 2 5-gallon cans every 3 days at the water station in Fairmount Park, sometimes stopping at a gas station sink when she was running low between refills. The Planet Fitness on Central Avenue opened at 5 a.m., which solved the shower problem with 15 minutes to spare before her shift. She paid $10 for the membership with her debit card and felt absurdly like it was the best money she'd spent in years. At the library on 9th Street, she charged the marine battery from a wall outlet near the back study tables while she applied for jobs and worked through a free financial literacy course she found through a California workforce program. What surprised her was not how hard it was. It was how quiet it was. The unit held the sounds of the building, distant HVAC hum, occasional footsteps in the hallway, once the muffled sound of someone crying 2 rows over, who stopped before she could decide whether to do anything. She started recording voice memos into her phone each night before sleep. Her day, the regulars at groundwork, what she was learning, how strange it was to feel competent and invisible at the same time. The 6th week was when things got hard, in a way that felt different from ordinary hard. It began on a Thursday morning at 5:20 when Maya rolled up the door of B17 and found a man standing in the hallway 3 feet from her face. He was broad-shouldered, in a dark uniform jacket, holding a flashlight pointed at the floor. Her heart did something she could only describe afterward as a full stop. Not racing, not pounding, just briefly, completely halted. He was Dave Kimura, a private security contractor whose beat was technically the facility next door on Magnolia. He had come through a shared access easement that Maya hadn't known existed and was apparently doing a sweep of the adjacent property line. He looked at her. He looked past her at the wall of boxes visible in the gap of the open door. He looked at her again. "Early bird," he said, in the flat tone of a man who had seen most things and assigned significance to few of them. Then he turned and walked back toward the gate. Maya stood in the doorway for a full 30 seconds after he disappeared around the corner, her pulse returning in increments. She didn't sleep again that morning. 2 days later, she found a small index card tucked under the door of B17. It was in Carl's handwriting. "Neighboring property security does perimeter sweep, twos and fry, approx 5:15 a.m., East Easement Gate." She understood that he had not left it before because he had not known she needed it before. 3 nights later, the propane heater's oxygen sensor activated at 2:14 a.m. and shut the unit down. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees outside. She woke to cold settling into her shoulders through the sleeping bag, the air in the unit thin and dark and still. She relit the heater with hands that shook from cold rather than fear, or so she told herself. It took 20 minutes for the space to return to livable warmth. She sat with her back against the box wall and her sleeping bag around her shoulders and cried, not dramatically, not the way crying looks in movies, but the way it happens when you're alone at 2 in the morning and the full weight of what you're doing presses down all at once and there's nowhere to put it except out. It was the water jug that told her. Maya had come back to Hillside one afternoon during a gap between shifts to refill her battery and found a plastic 5-gallon jug sitting near the office door with a strip of masking tape on it reading for tenants, "Help yourself," in the same careful handwriting she had seen on the unit rental agreement. A week later, the light in the B-row hallway, dead since before she'd moved in, its cover, yellowed and cracked, had been replaced. New bulb, new cover, clean white light, the full length of the corridor. Carl had also, she noticed, begun leaving the office door propped open an additional 30 minutes past closing, which meant the building's heat ran longer into the evening. These were not the actions of a man who didn't know. Maya sat with that knowledge for several days, turning it over the way you turn over something fragile, waiting for it to break. It didn't. Instead, she started looking, cautiously and indirectly, at the history of Hillside Storage, county business records, old local news, a 2-paragraph mention in a 2019 Riverside Press Enterprise article about small business owners who had pivoted after retirement. Carl Benson had spent 31 years as a high school shop teacher at Martin Luther King High School in Riverside before purchasing Hillside at age 64. The article mentioned a daughter. A separate mention in a neighborhood Facebook group from 2020 referred to a fundraiser for a woman named Lisa Benson who had been going through a tough time. Maya didn't dig further. She didn't need to. She understood the language of people who built soft landings without announcing them. She went to the office the next morning during business hours for the first time and asked Carl if there was anything she could help with around the property in exchange for a small reduction in rent. Carl looked at her over his reading glasses for a long moment. "You sweep," he said finally. "I'll knock off $20. She swept every Tuesday and Friday for the next 6 weeks. The library on 9th Street became the second address she lived at, though nobody would have called it that. She was there most mornings between 6 and 8:30, the marine battery charging under the desk, her laptop open to whatever course or application or document needed her attention that day. The financial literacy program ran 12 modules. She finished it in 3 weeks. It taught her things she was ashamed to not already know: how compound interest worked, what a W-4 was for, how to read a pay stub, what renter's insurance covered, and why it cost less than a dinner out. She made a spreadsheet. She tracked every dollar coming in and every dollar going out. The number at the bottom of the spreadsheet grew slowly and steadily, the way savings grow when your fixed costs have been reduced to almost nothing and your discipline is enforced by necessity rather than willpower. In the gym bathroom mirror one morning, she noticed she looked different than she had in March, leaner, more alert, with the particular expression of someone who is paying close attention to their own life. It was at Planet Fitness that Jessie Moran reappeared. They had been in the same junior English class at Ramona High School and had not seen each other since graduation. Jessie was in her 3rd year at UC Riverside, talkative, warm, wholly unguarded, and perceptive in the way that made Maya immediately both grateful and careful. When Jessie asked where she was living, Maya said she was staying with a friend temporarily while she figured out her next move. The answer was practiced and technically true enough to survive casual scrutiny. What it couldn't survive was Jessie's follow-up 3 weeks later, a Tuesday morning, side by side at the sink. Jessie looking at her reflection and Maya's reflection simultaneously, and saying quietly, "Maya, are you actually okay?" Maya looked at the drain for a moment. Then she told the truth. Jessie didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Is there anything I can actually do?" Maya thought about it for a moment. "The kitchen," she said. "Once a week, I prep everything at once." Jessie nodded. "Tuesday evenings," she said. "I'll text you." Tyler Marsh was 22 and had been working part-time at Hillside for about 3 weeks when he figured it out. Maya came back one afternoon to find a folded piece of paper wedged under the door of B17, pushed through the quarter-inch gap at the bottom. She unfolded it standing in the hallway. The handwriting was young and slightly uneven. "I know. I won't say anything. Please be careful. No name." She knew it wasn't Carl's handwriting. She kept the note in her jacket pocket for 2 days. Aware of its presence, the way you're aware of something small that hasn't yet decided what it means. On the 3rd day, she was unlocking the unit when a voice behind her said, "Hey." Tyler was leaning against the wall at the end of the B-row hallway with his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. He told her about his younger sister in Portland. He said her name was Kira, and that she had been sleeping in her car for 6 weeks before a coworker let her use a spare room. He said he had grown up watching his parents make impossible math work, and that he had never, not once in his life, been in a position to judge anyone for doing the same. Maya thanked him. She meant it in a way that didn't have the right words. The following Friday morning, Carl Benson knocked twice on the frame of B17 while Maya was inside and said her name through the door. She rolled it up and stood in the opening. He looked at her with the expression of a man who has been carrying a decision for longer than he needed to. "How much longer do you need?" he asked. Not accusatory, not unkind, just direct. Maya told him she had a job interview the following week, a real one. Carl nodded. He told her she had 60 days, and that in exchange he needed her to make one phone call, 211, the housing line, and actually listen to what they had. She called that afternoon. She listened. The job was real. The interview was at a small insurance brokerage called Pacific Crest Associates on Market Street in downtown Riverside. Administrative assistant, full-time, $19 an hour, benefits after 90 days. She wore the one blazer she owned, which she had kept hanging from a single hook on the back wall of B17 since the first week, smooth and unwrinkled, because the climate-controlled air was exactly as good for fabric as it was for cardboard. She got the call on a Thursday afternoon standing outside the library. She walked back inside, sat down at the study table where her battery was charging, and put her hands flat on the table and looked at the wall for a moment before she allowed herself to feel it. By the first week of August, she had saved $1,250, enough for first month and deposit on a room in a co-living house on Arlington Avenue, $540 a month, 3 other tenants, a shared kitchen, a bathroom with a door that locked from the inside. She moved out of B17 on a Sunday, reversing the process she had performed 5 months earlier. Box wall broken down, cartons flattened and left at the recycling area near the gate, air mattress deflated, battery loaded into the rolling cart. The unit was clean. She swept it herself. The morning she left, she stopped at groundwork before her old shift would have started and found Ruth Hendricks at her usual table by the window with her usual coffee and her usual book. Maya sat down across from her without asking and said, "It was you, wasn't it?" The note in the drawer. Ruth looked at her over the rim of the cup for a moment, then set it down and said, "How long?" 5 months, Maya said. They talked for 2 hours. Ruth had spent 11 years volunteering with a Riverside tenant advocacy group and had seen the storage unit solution used twice before. Once by a woman she'd known from church, once by a man whose situation she'd heard about secondhand through the group. She had written the note years ago and left it in the drawer on a quiet Thursday morning without telling anyone. The way you leave something in case it's needed without being able to say when. Maya recorded it with Ruth's permission on her phone. 2 women in a coffee shop in Riverside talking about what it cost to survive in a country that had made survival expensive and then declined to notice. She uploaded it 3 days later to a podcast feed she had created at 1 in the morning at the library, named it The Box Life, and wrote a description that was 4 sentences long. This is not a how-to. This is what it actually looked like. If you're in it, you're not alone. And if you're not in it, please listen anyway. Ruth shared the link at a housing forum at Riverside City Hall 6 weeks later. A community organizer named Sandra Phelps contacted Maya the following morning. and asked if she would be willing to speak at a state-level housing hearing in Sacramento in the fall. Maya said yes before she'd finished reading the message. She thought about the folded piece of paper in the drawer at Groundwork, the one she had found 8 months before the night she needed it, and left exactly where it was, and understood finally what it had been. A signal from someone who had been here before, had made it through, and had decided the least they could do was leave the light on. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us which part hit hardest, and let us know what city you are watching from.
Maya Callahan asked for sympathy. She asked for a change. At 24, she lost her apartment, her roommate, and her 13th all in the same week. Instead of collapsing, she opened a spaceship, worked as storage facility, and built a line inside a 10 by 10 unit for $260 a month. She saw a parallel finish at 5 a.m. She trained her laptop as a library. She prepared her meal once a week. She kept her blazer wrinkle-free one or single, just in case. She was reckless. She was risky. Every decision was calculated. Every risk with every dollar checker. But here what no headline will tell you. She did do it alone. A retired shop teacher so her waistline on a little longer. A security will look at the other way. A young co-worker sleep alone under her door. A stranger handwriting in a coffee shop. The row with her. If you're reading this, you might need it someday. Cerebral isn't just sound phonics, it's an invisible network of quiet humans who choose with just announcement to make room for someone falling. May I mess it out? Million heaven. The question is whether people like Maya are strong enough. The question is whether Ray built a world worthy of that strength.